Okay, so I'm now delighted to welcome to the stage somebody who is known as the Titan of Tech. Let me tell you a little bit more about Jacqueline de Rochas. She is President of Tech UK, Chair of Digital Leaders, a board member of Rightmove, Costain and AO World. She's also part of the government's Digital Economy Council, and she's really here now to talk about how we can develop the next generation of tech talent, and in particular encourage more women to take STEM roles and much, much more. So please give a nice warm welcome to Jacqueline.
Thanks, morning.
So Jacqueline, welcome. It's really wonderful to see you. And actually, as a mum of two girls myself, it's actually really interesting just to be able to have a chat with you. I know, particularly at my daughter's school, STEM is very much at the top of the agenda. But I also read a really interesting article about you yesterday. And I'd just like to start by asking, how your background really shaped where you are today.
So I was not in technology at all. I actually studied a degree in languages, and I lived in Germany, which we've heard a lot about today. But I wanted to be a newscaster on the BBC, as it happens, and I had to pay the bills. So anyway, I came back to the UK and I was offered a job in technology recruitment, and after 2 years I went to work for my first client. So that's how I fell into tech.
That
accidentally.
Wonderful, but what a wonderful career you've got, and incredibly busy. I don't know how you managed to do all of that. But let's just talk about, getting women into STEM and why you're so passionate about that. Talk about that for a moment.
Well, so I have always operated in a very male-dominated environment.
Yes.
And what I realized is that when I started to put diverse teams together, I simply got better business outcomes and better decision-making. So not only that, my journey was quite hard. I remember in 1999 I went up for a job as country leader of a very large computer software company, and I was 30 times more experienced. I had 30 times more responsibility than the person I was competing with. And I didn't get the job. And I was told, Jacqueline, we simply don't put women on the leadership team. So from there on in, I thought, actually, it shouldn't be this hard.
Absolutely not. And funnily enough, I was going to ask you about that quote because it was in this article that I read about you yesterday, and that's just gobsmackingly awful, isn't it? And how have you seen things change then, since then?
Well, it has changed a little bit in technology. We are doing a lot more, but in retail, for example, in the FTSE 350, it has stalled over the last 3 years. We've still only got very few women. I think it's 8% of women are actually in charge of the money part of retail businesses, the P&L part. And that has to change because you follow the money and you follow the influence and power, and we have to make a difference there.
Absolutely. So give us some examples of what you are doing to make that change.
So one of the really exciting areas that I work with is the Girl Guiding Association.
I saw that.
And that's amazing. There are 550,000 of them in this country. And what's really exciting about them is that they don't have to go to Girl Guides, which is a bit different from having to go to school. And what we've just implemented is a huge amount of STEM badges. They earn badges as they go through the Girl Guiding ranks. And there are badges for AI, artificial intelligence. There are badges for consent online to keep them safe, and the whole gambit in between. And that is really exciting because the Girl Guiding Association is saying, we are interested in tech, but at age 7, I think the stats are, I think it's pretty even that girls and boys think that the STEM career could be interesting. Mm-hmm. By the time they get to age 11 and 14, I think it's like 4% believe that roles in technology are for girls and not for are not appropriate for girls in careers. So it goes down. It's a huge swing.
Yeah.
So from it being neutral at age 7
to
age 11, only 4% think that they could have a career in STEM. it's quite shocking.
That is quite shocking. So things need to change. I would say, while I'm talking to Jacqueline, do please ask some questions. You're going to need to close down the app to refresh it so that you are back in on the right time scale there. So yeah, that is extraordinary. My daughter, for example, is 11. There's a huge push at the school for STEM, and actually, she came out, she was inspired, etc. But of course, we need to do more, don't we?
We need to do more. There's a lot of stereotyping in the classroom. There's a lot of stereotyping at home. There's a lot of stereotyping on the high street. And I walked into a large retailer where I was looking at the T-shirts for age 8, and the blue one for boys said genius. The yellow one, okay, it wasn't pink, but the yellow one said make the world a prettier place. And if we keep selling that stuff, then that's going to be a problem. But more importantly, as parents and aunties and uncles and all of that, if we keep buying it, there will be the demand for it. So we have to really be careful about the stereotyping of our young people.
Okay, so let's talk further then about retail. We know, in particular, it's struggling to attract enough digital roles. So as an industry, what does retail need to do?
Well, all the talent goes to the cool companies. So if you're a young person in tech, you want to go where the community is really interesting, supported, doing really innovative things. The companies that are doing exciting things in tech, including the retailers, those ones are the ones that are attracting the young people. And it matters that you don't put them in lines of pods, that you put them in collaborative workspaces. It matters what coffee you serve. It matters that you create that flexible working environment.
Yes.
Because they need 24/7 access, because creativity is different in the next generation than 9 to 5, going to work. That's where we do our emails and come home. And when I remember talking to one of my reverse mentees who was telling me how I should run the business, I said, maybe I should send out an email memo about that. And he said, we don't read email. So it's a lesson, isn't it?
It
and
really
we've got
is.
to go on a journey about how to connect. And I think we just have to be much more savvy about who it is we want to recruit into the company, how we attract and how we retain. And there are lots of lessons from the titans like Amazon and Google and all of the big tech businesses.
Absolutely. So would you take that further then and just paint us a picture, give us an example of one company that you think is being innovative and is being savvy and is attracting more women?
Well, I think Lego as an example.
Yeah.
If you haven't been to that workspace in their new London space, have a look. It's really cool. And it's full of flexible working opportunities. It's bright, it's exciting, it's interesting. They're doing really innovative stuff. So it's a great place to be. And it's a feel-good thing. It's a community thing. Work is much more social than it was. There are no hard lines. So we have to be mindful of that.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. And we know that we mentioned that you are on the AO board. Share some of the work that they're doing to attract more women.
So AO has signed up to, it's a really great place to work, by the way, culturally.
Yeah.
And it's signed up to the Tech Talent Charter. And the Tech Talent Charter, I encourage every company to sign up to, and it's simply pledging how you operate in the zone of diversity. So you appoint someone who wakes up in the morning and worries about diversity for your business. So that's one thing you do.
Yep.
The second thing is you adjust your recruitment processes to be more flexible and inclusive. And thirdly, you then make sure that you share your data in terms of how you're doing. And if you just do those three things, shifts change quite dramatically, and we're doing a lot of that at AO.com. I do, and all of our executives and external speakers come in and do inspirational speaking for diverse groups of people at AO. And of course, our customer base is so diverse, so there's no getting away from it. We have a lot of attention on our maternity and paternity processes. We're not there yet. That's a journey. But we are absolutely looking at all of those things.
Oh, all right, Jacqueline. So let's bring in some questions then. So, I think it's amazing, isn't it? As a mum myself, I see my kids and they all want to be these tech giants and tech, at a remarkable young age. So let's take the first question there. What would you advise parents who want to raise titans in tech?
Well, firstly, I'd make it gender neutral. And I would just dispel this myth that geeks have to be boy-looking. I blame the 1980s when we marketed the personal computer absolutely at men, and that is where it has firmly stayed. So we have to break that cycle and take the kids to coding clubs. In enroll them in things like the Girl Guiding Association, where you can do lots of STEM-related activities. And the Girl Guides themselves will actually say they quite like girls-only coding clubs so that they don't feel like they're under pressure from the boys in the group or that they're the only girl in the room. So Coder Dojo or coding or the STEMettes, really good places for parents to take their kids to learn coding. And of course online there's great technology called Kano, K-A-N-O, which is about build your own laptop. And is really exciting in terms of introducing kids to Raspberry Pi and all sorts of exciting tech things like that. But I'm just going to say tech doesn't have to be about programming. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm in tech and I am not a programmer. It's all about creative things. And in fact, we should say STEAM, not STEM, because there's an A in there, which is about being artful and being creative. And that's, as we move forward with all of the robotics that we have talked about this morning, we will need to see more empathy, more team building, more problem solving capabilities in our teams and not just roomfuls of rocket scientists.
But I think that's right. So STEM itself conjures up a certain image, doesn't it? Change it to STEAM and you get the creative thinking. And
absolutely.
And it changes people's mindset.
It changes completely. And it's super important because we are moving so fast in tech that it is now largely unregulated. Because we're creating and designing algorithms so quickly. And these algorithms that we're putting into the robots are deciding things like who should have a mortgage, who should have a university place, who should have a job interview. And we need to make sure that people who are creating those algorithms come from diverse design teams. If you don't, you will have what happened with the seatbelt when it was first invented, and women and children were killed because men invented the seatbelt for their size and general weight. So we have to do the same thing with technical algorithms and make sure we've got diversity embedded in the design teams. That's the only way we will be able to regulate.
Okay, Jacqueline, thank you. Let's take another question then. You can see it there. Critical choice stage is the transition from GCSE to A-levels. So how can women or females be encouraged to take the STEM route at that stage? Or do you think it needs to be embedded earlier?
No, so I think role models matter. If you can see it, you can be it. And I firmly believe that we need to, if any of you would like to be engaged, and I offer this out to everybody here and online, that sign up for the Founders for Schools Role Models program, where anybody can go into a school and just talk about STEM for an hour.
Yes.
At that age. And it's such a pivotal age. So you can decide whether you want some higher power to fix this, but the cavalry's not coming. We have to ask ourselves, are we bystanders or participants? And I would say be a participant and go into a school and give an hour back.
Okay, all right, wonderful. And so I suppose still staying on the school theme, how can they introduce more positive and diverse role models into the ICT syllabus?
Oh gosh, don't get me started. I know, the syllabus...
I mean, these are huge things, aren't they? Huge questions.
It's a great question, and the syllabus is not fit for purpose. The reason it's not fit for purpose is because it's not employer-led. And when the kids come out, they don't have the skills that we all need in our businesses. So we've got to, again, get employers inputting into work experience in the classroom, not only for the kids, but for the teachers. Because if we don't inspire the teachers, how are we going to inspire the next generation?
Absolutely.
So that's a very important program of work that's also being investigated by government-funded initiatives.
And let's turn to the current workforce then. What are we doing in terms of upskilling?
We're not doing enough, but if you think about it, every role in the future will have a digital element to it. Even if you are accessing, I don't know, benefits online, or I remember when I was on the board of Home Retail Group, where Argos was one of our companies, we had an initiative as an example that we taught lots of our customers how to use tablets in store instead of using the pencil and paper to buy something. And we also then gave them the tablet at a very, very reduced price. I think it was £20 or something like that. And it's a really good way of retailers able to engage with their customers, enabling them to work more effectively online. And this is especially to their demographic at the time was a much older one and not very tech savvy. But we need to do more of those kinds of community initiatives so that we're reaching people and we're not leaving anyone behind. Inclusion is important.
Absolutely. And I think, everybody listening to you, Jacqueline, will be really inspired. So I suppose, if you were to ask, a challenge to the audience about what they can do more as retailers, what would that be?
Certainly don't sell the blue stuff and the pink stuff. I would make it open for all. I love Mattel, who is selling Barbie. They're selling, the archetypal doll, but actually what they're doing is an initiative about be whoever you want to be. And they've got Barbies who are astronauts and coders, and
Yes.
it's really inspiring. And I think retailers could be a bit more creative about how they reach their audiences and not just support the stereotypical journey.
Absolutely. So it's breaking that mold, isn't it?
Take a risk.
Take a risk. And I suppose, it's very difficult, isn't it, to map out the 10 years that, in the last panel we were discussing, where do we see retail in the next 5 years? Where would you like to see it?
Well, retail is everywhere. So, and what's interesting is that retail sets the standard for all of our interactions in business as well. So we expect that sort of Amazon-like engagement in the benefit system, in the pension system, and so on. So they are setting the standard, leading the way. We are the biggest e-commerce market on the planet in terms of adoption. And I think retail experiences will morph into virtual reality. We will see much more of a, your wallpaper will be a screen at home, and we'll see all sorts of things happening. So I think it will set the standard. I think, though, actually, I can see that we may come back to wanting to interact with humans in a human-to-human way, and want some efficiencies in how we live our lives. But actually, I think social community and interaction will start to become more important as well.
Okay, Jacqueline, lovely. Let's bring in some more questions so you can see our time is whizzing by. But let's take that first question. So we train 45% of women at Makers Academy, and they find jobs rapidly. However, they tend to get stuck longer at the junior stage. So again, that's another key area. How do we change that?
It's a really interesting one. So there's a couple of things. One is confidence about taking the next step. So we certainly don't have enough women striding forward, and I understand that. But equally, the hiring panels for the next level, the frozen middle, I call it, is often not diverse enough and don't understand. And what by diversity, I don't just mean gender. I mean that we need in tech-related roles, for example, in security, you would do well to have someone on the Asperger's or autism spectrum, because they are great at spotting patterns that we can't see. So, I think diversity in all its forms is not necessarily a feature of hiring panels, and we need to do better in that area if we're going to move people up the food chain. Women particularly, I think we need flexible working. Like it or loathe it, we have commitments, and children are part of that. I welcome equal parenting, absolutely, but I do think that we could do more for women, and I would like to see childcare not taxed. Thanks.
Okay. All right, wonderful. And let's just talk about apprenticeships. So we're running out of time. How do we use these in helping create that diverse workshop?
Apprenticeships are a great way to create those employer-led skills. And I think it's also a really good way to encourage and retain loyalty. Where you've generally had your apprenticeship, you generally stay for a lot longer than you would elsewhere, because you have that, that understanding, that cultural alignment. So I think apprenticeships should be much more used. We should make more use of the apprenticeship levy in both small business and also large businesses.
Wonderful. Jacqueline, let's leave it with one more question, so brief answer, if possible. So much to talk about. How does recruitment need to change for traditional retailers to attract more diverse digital talent?
In recruitment, I think the recruiters need to have diverse pools on their hiring and search firms, search teams. But I think also, in hiring, we really need to make sure that we have shortlists that are insisting that there is diversity on the shortlist. Whether you still choose the right person for the job, but if you come back with a shortlist that is all male, for example, because you can't find anyone, I would always push it back and say try harder. Fish in a bigger pool.
Yep.
Change your search consultant.
Okay.
Or your criteria.
Yes.
Be more flexible.
Be more flexible. So I suppose if there's one parting message for everybody here, and we've talked about loads and the time has whizzed by, what would that be?
It would be look outwards, not inwards. So be open, not closed to your fixed ideas of how things should be. And I would always also say, remember that the cavalry isn't coming on diversity. Everything, every small decision you make makes a massive difference, and that matters.
All right, Jacqueline, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank
Jacqueline
you.
de Rochas, everybody. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very
really
much.
great. Thank you.